Hi, it's Mark here, Wednesday, March the 4th, 9:49 a.m. Eastern, which is 2:49 p.m. GMT. US session now well underway and going into the last 2 hours of the European session. Let's have a look at the US dollar. Certainly a change in the picture. Red candlestick selling US dollar on the index. You can see the sell-off today. I've got resistance at 99.32 and I've got support at 98.38. The change here has been, we've seen this steady demand for US dollars leading up to the weekend, leading up to the outbreak of war in the Middle East, and then Monday and Tuesday, strong flight for US dollar safety. Today, a definite turnaround and is being sold off. We'll see whether that can be maintained through the US session if we see a continuation or at least a maintenance of this US dollar weakness today, or if US dollar is going to step back in and continue with demand for US dollar and we see buyers look up to this resistance level. Interesting to note that the sell-off and the bounce lower did come at the same level as we saw middle of January. You can see where US dollar hit this resistance level, strong sell-off that followed. Clearly different circumstances we're in today, but from a technical perspective, interesting to see that the bounce down came off the same resistance level. Let's have a look at how the majors are performing, starting on the euro against the US. And there you see, following the red candlesticks on Monday and Tuesday, so far today, small green candlestick going into the US session. That's euro strengthening against the US giving up some gains. We'll see whether that continues, whether buyers look up to this resistance and break higher, or if we go, US dollar does fight back and sellers look down to the support. Support at 115.73 and resistance at 116.53 for now, and currently sitting pretty much in the middle of that range, perhaps slightly closer to the top half of the range. Let's have a look at the pound against the US. Similar looking pattern. Going into today, selling pound, buying US dollar strength. You can see the bounce back yesterday, and today pound has strengthened against the US. There's that small green candlestick. I've got support at 133.05. I've got resistance at 134.03. There's your 100 pip range so far, and buyers of pound, sellers of US will be looking up at this resistance to continue what you see and strengthen against the US dollar, test the resistance level, perhaps higher. A resumption of US dollar strength would see sellers looking down at the support level. Sitting again in the middle of the range, similar to what we saw again with the euro US dollar. We'll see through the US session how that does play out. US dollar against the yen. Here again, we're seeing, as opposed to the strong uptrend buying US dollar, selling yen, turn around today, bounced down off this resistance area, and so far US dollar weakening against the yen, or giving up the gains that we have seen. I've got resistance at 157.85. I've got support at 156.87. There's your 100 pip range. We'll see whether the sell-off does continue. If sellers look down to this support level, the support area, perhaps even lower, or if US dollar buyers step in and this bounce that you're seeing continues, buyers will look up at the 157.85 resistance level. And then the US dollar against the Canadian. And that's really very flat. There you can see the sideways. Look at the close over the past few days and so far today, all sitting around that 136.70 area. today has tried a bit higher and lower. I've got resistance at 136.97, just below the 137 level. Tough level. US dollar buyers haven't been able to break above that 137, as you can see, for a while, for the whole of February. And I've got support at 136.45. That's the level sellers will be looking at. It's flatter than the rest. The US hasn't strengthened to the same extent against the Canadian as we have seen over the past few days, um, where it strengthened so much against the majors, not so much against the Canadian. And I think that's partly due to the strong correlation between the oil price and the Canadian. And as the urgency and supply concerns relating to oil that we're dealing with is, I think, what the Canadians have been able to maintain and hold its strength for now. We'll see whether buyers, US dollar buyers, can come up, test that 137 level or higher, or if we're going to see Canadian strength, selling US, buying Canadian, sellers will look down at the 136.45 support level. So we definite turnaround today from what we have seen so far since the start of the week. US dollar giving up some of those gains. We'll see whether that can be added to, whether the US dollar fights back. We've got our resistance and support levels to work with. Good trading.